Everyone, my guest today is a 3 times MVP and global black belt Microsoft Dynamics 365 for finance and operations. Murray Fife was once a neighbor, having lived next door in New Zealand. He's now living and working in the United States, and about 9 months ago, he left Microsoft and has now set up Fife Consulting Services. I first learned about Murray when I bought his Configuring Dynamics books. I worked my way through the whole pack, quickly configuring a system and getting it operational. Murray helped me when I was in a pickle. But aside from D365, he plays the guitar, is a master of dedicated workspaces, and runs a Tinkerer's Notebook with 3,000 subscribers. So let's chat with Murray. Productive, or are you a creative and therefore you never set deadlines and goals for yourself?
The when you're working for yourself, then your priorities change, and you do change to say, I need to be productive. But I think you pick and choose what you're doing. So I try to think I always try to be productive, or at least do something that's useful.
What's a measure of productive to you? Is it billable hours?
It's partly I've got a I've got a goal of billable hours that I want, but there's other things I've got on my list of things things that I want to do or try to do during the day. Like I'm trying to learn Spanish, so generally I spend an hour a morning going through that on Duolingo. So it's obviously not a billable thing, but it is productive. It sort of helps me along the way, and there's other things that to fill that extra time that are also productive, instead of just sitting and watching YouTube videos, which sometimes I do along as I'm working. So
actually, it's when you get caught into the shorts and you end up there for an hour and you go like, what am I doing? I was here and now I'm here.
Yeah, I just keep on pressing next and next, and you've just got to stop the insanity and say, no, enough. So
Well, I looked at my daughters and I laughed how they're caught in an Instagram and they're just so focused on it, and I laugh at their addiction. And then I realize I'm doing the exact same thing as I'm talking to them. I'm just scrolling and going click, click, click.
or you're on LinkedIn scrolling down through LinkedIn, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. They're all just different forms of addiction.
Same, yeah. Just the different stages of life. Where did the initial spark from you getting into IT come from? Like, was it as a young boy or later on in life?
I never or I'll start at the middle and then go to the beginning. When I was going to university, or planning to go to university, for some reason I had no inkling to do like computer science, the business side, and then, although as I was growing up, I'd always been interested in computer side. I had a computer, I think, probably when I was maybe like 11 or 12, like a VIC-20. Had 3.5 K of memory, not meg, not gigabytes.
So can I jump in there?
Yeah.
I had a VIC-20, and I didn't even ask you this before. 3,584 characters worth of memory.
Yeah, unless you got the expansion pack, then you end up yes, then you end up to 16K. And we'll digress a little bit, but I was at an antique store, probably around about, might have been 10 years ago, or maybe longer, and there was a VIC-20 in a box there.
Yeah, and the little rainbow
Yeah,
Colors
with
on
the
the side. Yeah.
Commodore Rainbow on it, and then the guy was trying to sell it for like $70. And I said to him, he said, I want that because I that was my first computer that I grew up with, and I'll give you $20 for it, and I'll probably be the only person that you'll find that'll want to take it off your hands for that. And
You're a hard man. I'm a hard hero.
I think
70
think
bucks is nothing.
yeah, but think oh that's back when I was poor, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
but it was we negotiated a little bit, and now I've got
Okay.
it, it's sitting in the room somewhere. But yeah,
Did you have the
so
original software that you could restore it onto it?
I don't I think it came with a tape deck, but
Yeah.
yeah, no games or anything along with it. But so I had computers, and I like computers, and I like programming and doing stuff. And then I went to university, and they said, and there were two main universities, Auckland and Waikato, that had that were close enough to go to. And there was one which was the business software, like the business side, the ERP side, at the time back then. And I said, I don't want to do that. That's boring. So I did the other
Who would?
course they
Yeah.
had, yeah, which was artificial intelligence, and did that. And then after I did that 4 years later, I was applying for a job, and the first job I got was with a ERP company based in New Zealand called Simdeck that was selling a product called Ross Enterprise or Ross Systems, and or Renaissance, and it was an ERP, and then I've been doing that ever since. So I sort of didn't really want to get into it, and then I ended up doing it, and don't regret it. I think it's really interesting, the business side of all of these things. So never really planned to, but fate's pushed me in this direction.
True. A lot of people are telling me about their foray into ERP systems and how you don't sit there imagining this is the hottest place that's going to be in IT in a few years, so therefore I'll skate to it. It often is, oh, they have a skill and someone notices it, or like you just did, something popped up. Can I just step back 1 minute, even though
Yeah.
this is an interview about you and your history? I just got reminded about that Vic 20, and it reminded me about how with coding for say a simple machine like that, but it applies to today's machines as well, is I used to go to the newsagent. In those days, they were like a library almost. If you couldn't afford a book, you'd go to the newsagent and you'd read through it. And they used to give us code, like in a PC magazine. And I would come home with that code, translate it from whatever version of GW Basic that it was into Vic 20 Basic, and it gave me a maze. And then from the maze, I could put little robots in it. And pretty soon I was writing real code, but it all came from someone else giving me the parts that could make up something, worthwhile. Did you find that with Vic?
Yeah, it's yeah, the magazines that were out were hobbyist, more hobbyist magazines, and yeah, they had code in them, and there's code magazines right now, but not like back then. And and then there were some magazines, I forget the name of it, but in the back they'd have a game that would
Yes.
be in hash code. So you type in everything uh in like hexadecimal,
Okay.
and then you'd type in a line, and then there'd be a check code to tell you whether you'd typed it incorrectly, and it was
Okay.
pages and pages and pages, and then you could uh, go out and type all that in, and if you're lucky, then when you get to the end, then the game would work, and it would be more of the advanced games like Pac-Man with better graphics than and
So they're
all
not
of
giving
these
you the
things.
source code. They're giving you like assembled.
Yeah, because probably it also needed assembly language, or it needed some uh and like on the VIC 20, in order to get like proper bitmaps, which you can't really get, then it was all down at the lower level. So it was like a dump of the compiled code as purely binary, or as hexadecimal or something like
I
that. And I
see.
remember
It's
typing
almost
it
like
in.
They're giving you the exe file in little strings.
Yeah, and it was pages and pages, but you typed it in because it was
Free game.
free-ish. Yeah, so apart from
I'm
your
si-
time that you spent there.
That's incredible. And it also shows you the thing people will do if you give them something attractive enough. They'll just burrow away typing millions of characters.
Yeah.
Okay, so you learned about ERP at uni, and then
Yeah, and then then I got out of university, and uh, I can tell you a funny story if you want about how I got the job, but it was with this company, and I sent my resume to a recruiter, and I created an infomercial uh,
wow.
resume, or not an infomercial. It was an infographic, and it had all of my skills in there, like at that time, Pascal
Yeah.
and whatever. And I
DOS
had
6.0.
yeah, and I had them as graphs, and then the guy said that's a really unique resume, and he said, but why on all of these do they go up to 10, and on this one it only goes to 8? Because I'd messed up the graph and I
You
should have
messed
changed
up.
the axis. And anyway,
So
so
your level of detail, attention to detail was abysmal. And then he goes,
yeah,
on that reason, I can't hire
yeah.
you.
I'm glad you found that mistake. It was an
Yeah,
intelligence test
yeah.
for you.
Yeah,
So
yes.
yeah, so so then so then I got my job. It was at a company called Simdeck, who's changed names a couple of times, and my boss. I'm still friends with my boss. He's a great guy, Neil Whitworth. But then I got there, and one of my first tasks was to go out and extend out fixed assets. So, and knowing nothing about it, and he said, oh, create a uh, he said, create a ER diagram of all the table structures. And I said, what's that? And he turned around and looked at me and said, did you even get a degree? I said, well, not in this. So
Oh,
not in business stuff. I got psychology and all of these other things.
he
So
digs up your resume and finds the graph with the number 8. And goes,
yeah,
I should have realized.
yeah. So so did that. I was programming for around about 9 months before turning to consulting, and that was the opportunity. I came over here here to the States for to do some work over here, and then since then I've been really it's been ERP all the time, going through various companies. Like it was a software company called Ross Systems, and then going to Microsoft, where which was probably around about 13 or 15 years ago now, using learning dynamics and moving through. So that's a short area of my career uh, with some pieces of luck and so forth that helped me get along.
It almost seems like a chess game because moving from New Zealand to America and positioning yourself in Microsoft, also in the middle of ERP, it does seem rather strategic. It's almost as if you're playing Game of Thrones back then and figuring out where to go to be in the right spot, to shine.
Yeah, it may seem like that, but it's more like me just fumbling my way through and accidentally falling onto a better opportunity along the way. The Although I, I did have something to do with it, but yeah, it was the the company that I worked for in New Zealand that it was only 9 months into that job, and they had needed someone to do bug fixing for the company that made the software over here in Atlanta, and so four of us came over from New Zealand to be like uh, bodies for them to go out and do all these bug fixes for one of the, I think it was a 3.1 release, not important, and then that was 4 weeks. It lasted for 8 weeks. And then I was lucky enough that I was starting up a branch here in the US. So they said, do you want to come over? So I just packed up my flat and came over here. and then went backwards and forwards between New Zealand and the States for a fair number of years, back when you could do that, and then sort of started to increase my skills along the way. Then when I was working at the previous company, Ross Systems, then I did a lot around the technology, but that's sort of where I started to have a lot of innovations, I'll say, with the product, because I was working on the technology side, but I could go out and I could tinker with things and I could put things together, which I think is one of the things that I do reasonably well. And I started writing and giving things to the customers as to how do you do this, and that was I did that. I was really just doing that just to help the customers. But it was back then we had we were going out and having actually had the Microsoft agents interfacing with the ERP system. That's when we had like Clippy and the Wizard and the ape that you could go and code and program and move around the screens. And then they had an event framework, which we could go out and we could connect other things. We could go out and start using Visual Studio. So I sort of found, at that point, I found my niche of sort of pushing the boundaries of the ERP from just the core things that people normally do, which is the financials and the manufacturing, out to the peripheral. And then sharing with the customers, and that's when I started sort of not started building things, writing a little bit, and then creating tutorials along the way.
And that aspect that you've developed is so pivotal to the switch from just ERP to an enhanced level. And a lot of people may not realize at the time that you were writing those customer stories or trying to integrate that specific piece of software, that you were building a muscle that had to be continually, expanded on. And later on, it would serve you. Have you always found that you're working on something that seems rather trivial, then with your next client or one later, that early piece of playtime becomes so helpful?
It does, and partly I did the documentation or the writing. It was twofold. It was partly for myself, because as everyone sort of into this industry knows, you go out and you do something, and unless it's a very, very core function, then you're probably not going to do that configuration or work that piece of technology for a while, and then you're going to come back and then have to relearn it and rediscover it and work through. So it's partly it was to help myself remember some of these things, because for the non-trivial things. And then, but once you've built this, then there's no extra work or no harm to share it out with the community along the way. A funny example or a pertinent example is today I was working on something and trying to work out how procurement categories work within Dynamics, and I couldn't work something out, and I went back and I found a post that someone else had made, like on Cash, great guy, and from 2017 that steps through things. So sharing anything that you share out, and it doesn't. A lot of things don't age. The screens may change, but the concepts in ERP are pretty constant along the way. And with Dynamics, a 2012 screen is going to be very similar to a Dynamics 365 screen from the functional standpoint. So I went back there and I found it, and it was a godsend. gave me the button to push to go out and complete what I was trying to do. So it's
Wow.
yeah, and when I do a search and when I find my stuff, I thought, oh, I know that. Show me something different along the way. But I was also looking at my blog posts, which I haven't updated as much as I should lately, but it's still getting around about 100 or so views each day of all of these
It's incredible.
all of these older posts. I won't say old, but there's more older posts that
Earlier posts.
your earlier posts that teach core concepts like costing sheets and procurement catalogs and all of these other things as well. So it's it keeps on. If you're doing this
Giving.
work, then share it. I found that if you share it out, then it helps everyone. It helps yourself. It helps the community in the long term, and just in general, it's a good thing to do.
Then what would you say to people who are worried that that's their secret sauce, right? Like, I'm a consultant, I've built this up, and this is what earns me the money. Now you're giving it away.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I could think on the cynical side, well, if you don't post it, someone else is going to post it, and then they're
They'll
going to
get that
get the
benefit.
credit.
No.
They're going to get the benefit from it. But the other thing is, it's not nothing. Nothing's there's not a lot of secret sauce in the system. It's but there's a lot of things that are hidden away, and if you have the time, if you've got that muscle to go out and and document it and talk about it, then why not? Why not share that with the community? Because it's karma. It'll come back and twofold for everything that you give out along the way. But it but something you talked about earlier on is it is a muscle. It is a something that you can build up just by doing, and and it it can expand out and help you in a number of different ways as you start learning. It's like learning a skill, learning how to play tennis, learning how to speak a different language. The writing the writing and the sort of like the technical mindset that you have is something that you can build up on.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned karma there. I found that for every person that is writing content, you're almost inspiring other people to do that. And if you want to look at that circle, maybe a future problem you're trying to solve comes from someone who you motivated to write out that solution.
Yeah, and it's right, and you can't solve everything. And the first thing anyone does is they go out and do a search and try to find how to solve something. And and we can't know everything, and there's and so you're going to get inspiration from other people. It may not be exactly what you're looking for, but there's gems of information that will help you on your problem that you're solving, as someone's done a variation of it. But yeah, if you the more and more people that can go out and start sharing the information, and sharing good information, as opposed to uh, some cryptic information on on chat boards, on sort of how to do it if you're trying to sort of covet your
Hmm.
knowledge and not share it. Then it's just a good thing to do, I think, in the long term.
True, true. One of the problems I'm working on is to try to figure out the meta language of the articles of, the knowledge that you write and other people write. So, for example, when you created a particular problem, when here's the solution, it's in English, say. And I know you can translate that to French or Arabic or anything, but how do we take that knowledge and put it into code so it becomes a bit like a Microsoft update? Because a lot of this knowledge requires me to read it, process it, and to figure out if it applies to me. And then if it does, how do I go search for that, problem with this solution? So anyway, that's what I was interested in. How do we process all of the gigabytes of knowledge?
Well, large language models, that'll solve everything.
Yeah. Okay, so how did you actually then step from these early smatterings of writing, solutions, and then come up with the idea, oh, I think I'm an author in the making.
So as I went, so going back to my career, so I was at Ross Systems, and I was creating these walkthroughs, and they were PowerPoints for the most part, PowerPoints, and this is sort of my formula, not my secret sauce, it's my formula on how to do things. I'd create screenshots and then describe what the screenshot does, because that's a how-to guide, sort of see, spot, run, sort of moving through. So I was doing that, and then I moved over to Microsoft, and it when I moved to the Microsoft domain, it was humbling, because I knew everything at this product and nothing at Dynamics, and I thought it'd be easy, but it's not. It's learning. It's like learning to row rather than ride a bike. It's a different animal. So I was starting right at the bottom, and then because I did that, and because I had this muscle for how do I write, or how do I explain things, then I thought, I made a decision at that point. I'm gonna create guides, partly for myself, but share it out on how to do things with Dynamics. And it was there's nothing too small or too simple that you shouldn't document, because I've found that when you go out and when you look at online documentation, it's at this level, and if you know this level, then the documentation makes sense. But if you don't have this foundation, then you sort of flounder. And so it takes so long to work out what the documentation says, and then you understand it. Then you look back and say, "Oh, that's what it meant," but the simple concepts are missing. So I decided from the beginning, I'm going to go out and start documenting these. So I went out and did that as I was learning it. So from like a beginner's mindset, I went out and did this, and then I started creating I had a whole slew of this knowledge stored away in PowerPoints with descriptions on them. And then I had the chance to I don't know whether I think Pact contacted me. So they contacted me to see if I wanted to write a book, and I did. So I wrote a book with them. But what I did is I went out and it was a cookbook on how to extend out AX 2012, but I already had all of this, these drafts that allowed me to put them together into the guides, and they were
Was it a meeting of minds?
Yeah, it was I think serendipitous is the right word. But I had walkthroughs that showed how do you set up cost categories, and how do you use the cases to manage processes. So I just combined all of those together, like 10 or 18 of these different things, and then made a book. And that taught me, that gave me a different muscle, because writing something with more words is a little bit more effort to go through than just writing like how-to guides. So I had this base of library that I could pull from, and then I created that guide. Then the Pact have a policy that if that they get first right of refusal for a second book. And so they refused the second book, which was great. So I cut out the middleman and started writing it all for myself, and self-publishing on Amazon. And
Rather a negative line, if you don't mind me saying, that they say first right of refusal. wouldn't you want something a bit more optimistic, like the first right to grab you,
Yeah,
I don't know, something that infers you're talented? It's almost like they just want to slap you away.
yeah. So, so and
Anyway,
yeah, and hopefully the team's noise reduction is working well because my dog's going crazy right
yeah,
now. Yeah,
correct. I can't
yeah,
hear.
great. So, yes, I did that, and then it's I started learning more around how to write just a little bit more than the basic stuff along the way. And I'm not writing like Game of Thrones or anything like that. It's technical guides or how-to guides, but it seemed to hit a resonate with people for the just having these tips and tricks to help them along the way. So I kept on doing that, and uh, taking what I had, and then I started to publish on Amazon, and publishing is super easy. It's especially if you do it yourself. There's no inventory. Uh, there's no cranky editors, but you need to edit the books well because people jump on spelling mistakes like like hyenas on an animal. It's
On a
like
carcass,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I heard that that is another way of getting attention because these people pointed out, and then, well, they've read your article.
Yeah. So it's yeah, but it's humbling.
Okay.
Someone
So
complained.
it's grammar and spelling, right? And any other forms of editing they do, like, first person, third person.
I don't I don't there is I try to keep a certain tone to the books,
Mm,
and I try as for me as I'm writing, I try to make it collaborative. So I always say, now we can do this, we can do this, and
yeah, yeah,
move through like I'm there with them, trying to
yeah,
teach them
yeah.
how to
Hand
do it.
over the shoulder.
Yeah, and uh, and grammar and spelling. The one of the uh, one one life changing moment that I had was when I discovered Grammarly, and because
Mm, best
Gra-
friends.
Grammarly is great for tidying things up and sort of helping you along the way. So it's it gives that spot check as sort of as you're moving through the document. So it's there's that, and then also it's a lot of how-to guides are very formulaic. It's I don't know whether I told you this on another conversation, but I heard someone a story I like to tell is I heard someone talking to Rachel Ray, the chef, and she was being interviewed, and someone said, "Oh, you you've got a new cookbook out, and that must be amazing." And she sort of went offhand and said, "Yep, cookbooks are easy. Cookbooks are a no-brainer. All you do is it's just a recipe and some text that you put in it." And the um, the guide creating a guide, if you know the process, is relatively easy to do, and then converting it to a document and then publishing it is a very simple process. The the part that you need though on top of that is a story that helps you move through the process that you're working through, because a lot
I
a lot of documentation is very disjointed, and you need to, as you're setting something up, there is a plot, there is a step that you move through, and I try to incorporate that into the documentation just to make it a little bit more interesting than click on this, click on that.
Yeah, I remember reading an earlier blog of yours where you were talking about why isn't there all these other languages, and you gave the big worded names of languages. Why aren't they included in a 2012? Um, And that seems like that moment, that seminal moment where you went off on a slightly different tangent to build that context. Was it Lord of the Rings that inspired you?
Yeah, it was as I went through and built my guides, I had to have like a theme that of the company that I'm setting up that gives you continuity as you're building your data. And one I blatantly plagiarized from the TV show Alias. So it was a spy company, and it had different divisions and so forth. And then I think I've had a couple of different variations along the way, but my recent guides, the setting has been around the Dungeons and Dragons sort of theme. And as and the recent ones I've been coming back to, the one that you're saying, there's all of these fantasy languages. There's dragon language, and then there's common language and Elvish and so forth. And but I wanted to make the story a little bit more immersive so that I could model some of these things out. And it's a pain in the butt to try to create these additional languages that aren't. I can't believe that they're not ISO certified. That there isn't an Alvin or a Sarandon language out there in the ISO languages. There's Klingon, so why can't there be Dwarfish and all of these things? So I like it because it's interesting. I think it piques people's interest, and also when it's people that sort of latch onto that idea are passionate about it as well, and it sort of gives. You're not just creating a cookie shop, although a cookie shop would be fun to do, or something like that. It's it turns something which is very I won't say dull, but very maybe dull. Dull is a good word, although ERP is really exciting or interesting, I'll say. So it's a machine that's running in the background. It makes it a little bit more interesting and fun. Then I was hoping that I'd get a lot of crowdsourcing of people that would offer me help and write the code for me, but then I ended up having to write the extension and fumble through X++ myself. But it's but that something that around that line, when I was interviewing for Microsoft, I had to go through part of the interview process was a presentation. So I set up dynamics to work in the Dungeon and Dragon sort of realm. I had shipping terms which were by cart, by teleportation, by dragon, and I had all of these other things, and wrote a blog about it along the way. And then I got the job, but it was sort of over everyone's head at the interview process along the way. So it's a fun sort of area to extend our dynamics in.
Dude, tell us about your black belt. What does it mean to be a black belt in D365?
So the global black belts at Microsoft are there. I'd like to say and be humble. They're not that much different from the national team or from as a TSP. So there's but the black belts tend to be a little bit more strategic in what they're learning and what they're who they're working with. So they tend to work with the larger organizations. So when you're at Microsoft and you're a technical specialist, so you're doing demonstrations, then there's different groups. There's the digital group, there's the national team, which does a lot more traveling, and then the global black belts, which are supposed to be more the S100 or 500 sort of level of customers they interact with, and also try to solve some of the harder problems. So
Wow.
they've got a little bit more time to work through some of the newer products and work through them. So I was lucky enough to be a global black belt for I think 3 or maybe 4 years at Microsoft, working with those customers and solving some harder problems. Now there's global black belts all through the organization. So there's global black belts for F&O, and then also for field service, for customer service, for the Power Platform on the Biz Apps side. And I'm not quite sure whether there's global black belts on like the data and AI and so forth, but they tend to be a lot more highbrow anyway, with the customers that they're working with.
That's awesome. So is there like a test, or is there just recognition that you've been in the industry, you know this, and will promote you?
I think it's part reputation, or sort of as you're moving up there. There were in our group, there was a mix of people, because there were people like myself who came up from the national team to go up to the global black belt, that had deep product knowledge of dynamics and how that worked. But we also the global black belt team brought in other people at the same level from other organizations. So there were global black belts who didn't know dynamics but learned it really well, and they were smart people. But they came from Oracle, or they came from SAP, or on the CE side they would have come from Salesforce and come in. And the team itself worked really closely, sort of as a team, as opposed to being individuals. So then that gave other insights. For example, how the competitors work, and how everything sort of fits together. So it's not just the product knowledge, it's the industry knowledge that comes along with it as well, that some people came in as, and that rounds out the rounded out that group really well, and sort of everyone complemented each other.
I agree. I can hear your admiration of them. What about NVPs? How do they fit into this mix? Because I'm seeing now this sort of chain develop. Is it you start off learning D365, you're getting certified, then you move into logging because you want to share knowledge. Some people write books, and then you're almost getting to that MVP territory. And how does that tie into black belts?
Yeah, and I don't the for the I'd say that the MVP process is a great way for people to move to Microsoft. Now they could also move directly into the global black belt team, if depending on their skills. But the MVP, for the people watching that don't know what an MVP is, it's most valuable
Player?
player, I think. Yeah, which is it's a Microsoft Pro.
Person?
No, it's a recognition of people that aren't at Microsoft doing work and promoting Microsoft. I was an MVP for 3 or 4 years while I was in the partner channel, and part of that is that part of the way that you become an MVP is by sharing with the community. There are some people that worked the forums a lot. Rachel Prophet was one of those. She did a lot of work on the forums, on the communities, and was helping a lot. I went out and I wrote and then shared and spammed people with what I was learning. And so these it's more of these contributors that Microsoft then is able to recognize as MVPs. When you're an MVP, if if anyone has a chance to try to become an MVP, then it's a great tool if you're outside of Microsoft, because there's, I think I saw on LinkedIn that there was the MVP Summit just a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
and everyone comes in to usually to Redmond or Seattle, and then gets there's different training and also introductions to different people within the product organization, and you get to see people like Mike Ehrenberg and other people at Microsoft that you wouldn't normally get access to, and then also you get some additional freebies, so you get benefits like Visual Studio licenses and a couple of other things. But so the MVP process is not something that just people get. There has to be this contribution that you're giving back, which is partly again why if you can share things, don't covet your ideas. It's if you start building your brand and starting sharing things, then there's other benefits like the MVP program. And it's also a humbling process, because when you go to like the MVP Summit, then there's like 30 or so Dynamics people, great people, and I've got a lot of friends that I kept on meeting through the MVP process. But there's a whole lot more of other people on networking and security and office and productivity. Yeah, and so you realize that Dynamics, when in the Microsoft ecosystem, isn't a that there's, I won't say it isn't a big fish, but it isn't. There's so many other people there that are passionate about different things that are part of the MVP process as well. So when you said how does the MVP process sort of help, it sort of gave me a little bit of visibility within Microsoft. I knew some of the product managers that I continued to work with before I came to Microsoft, but then it gave me a little bit more visibility and some credibility as I came to Microsoft as well. I'm not saying that's the only way to get to Microsoft. You can go through the normal channels, but it sort of gives you a little bit of a leg up along the way. And also it's just street credibility and street cred, and when you're out there. And one other benefit that I found is that I also had the opportunity, even when I wasn't at Microsoft, to speak at some of the conferences. So it helps you if you've got the presentation
fortitude for it.
Yeah, then the user groups love having people speak. It's sort of like the chicken or the egg. You can be an MVP and then you can speak, or you can speak and then become an MVP, and they sort of work together. And then also as you meet some of the product managers, then that also means that you can they may want you to do some presentations at some of the larger events. So I don't think I talked at Convergence, but there were some of the partner sessions or partner conferences that Microsoft was holding, and I had the opportunity to talk at those as well. So it's a really interesting process to sort of move through.
I actually just had the speaker role now dropped into that MVP area in my mind, because as I thought you were, authoring, it leads to now speaking, and I had forgotten all about that aspect of being an MVP. Do you find it is more effort to prepare for a speech than it is to write the equivalent article? Because now you're having to put your tone and the way it's the pace, you know, that you're moving through the material for presentation.
I'm not sure. I don't know whether I'm typical. So because I like speaking and 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 uh, uh and if the content's there, then speaking is easier to do. But
Mm,
when you're in front of people, then there's portions of entertainment that you can provide. So the PowerPoints, there's things that you can do to make topics more interesting, or images that you can use, or different themes or stories that you can have in there. I remember one presentation I did, and it was when um, uh, it was when 2012 was being replaced by AX7. So one of the things in 2012 has got typing ahead, and you do a lot on the keyboard, and you can just blast away at it and work through it because it's a client application. When people are moving to the web, it's a little bit different because it doesn't really have the type ahead. It doesn't you can't work quite as fast, and you have to use the mouse a lot more. So I created a presentation which was Microsoft Dynamics for the mousophobic, which is people with a fear of mouse, which is actually a true phobia.
good thing. Okay.
and it's I think I had I was reasonably creative in there, and I had Tom and Jerry in there for chasing after the mouse. I had references to the Rolling Stones that you can't always get what you want, but you get what you need. And so it's presentations by themselves are easy. Making them interesting just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of creativity. But I don't know whether that's a lot more work once you've worked out your theme, or once you've worked out how you want to sort of present things. So and maybe I'm a little bit more blasé than some people. I don't stress over presentations
Sounds like
because
you,
I
if you
know
have the content,
because I know it works, and that's the
right?
key thing.
Yeah. So could I take any earlier book or article that you've written, and you'd feel comfortable quickly reviewing it and going, "Yep, I can talk about this." Is it that sort of memory or feeling?
It it with a little bit of a review, it is.
Yes.
It now the some I think the hardest thing with presentations, with in-person presentations, is the time limit. So because I tend to have too much. I'm getting better. I have too much information to share in the presentation. So that's where you go out and you don't you use sort of like a newsroom policy where you put the important stuff at the beginning, and then you can cut off anything that you want at any
I see.
time.
I see.
So to move through, so you don't hide the lead as you're sort of working through. So that's I think not having enough time, or not judging your time, is the hardest thing. And I think I've got pretty good at looking at content and sort of working out how much time I've got. But then if you haven't got enough time, then you find out some more creative ways to solve the problems. And if
Focus
you
and
want, I can
advice.
tell I can tell you one of the ways I did that.
Yeah.
I had a really ambitious presentation. It was 101 tips for Dynamics 365, and then I realized I only had like 60 tips. when I did the presentation, and then I
Who's
realized,
counting?
yeah, and then I realized I only had 60 minutes to do it. So I conscripted a colleague of mine and gave him a bag of M&Ms, and I told him to pick out an M&M, and I gave him a list of tips, and I said, read it. And I had this whole story that every M&M has actually got a number on it, and there's 100 M&Ms in a bag. So, and they put the numbers on them to make sure that they've got 100, they've got the right M&Ms in there. So I told him to go out and look at the M&M and then say the number from the list that I had, and then eat it as evidence. And he was going through, and he was saying, "Oh,
It's
tip number
randomized.
23," and then ate it and moved through. And then people said afterwards, "Are there really numbers on M&Ms?" I said, "Yeah, there are. Of course there are." So it's how you there's a lot of different ways you can sort of play, make presentations interesting and fun along the way.
That sounds fantastic. And so, okay, so I'm missing the point here. What about if you read a number that wasn't in your tip sheet?
And then I would have killed him, and because I actually gave him
Yeah,
the
I gave
list.
him the list.
Yeah, I gave him the list of like 10 or
Okay,
15 that I wanted to go through. So
that's cool.
because also I was using the keypad on my laptop to go to that slide. So when he said 23, I went 23, and it took me to the slide, and I said,
That's
"Oh, this is my most
brilliant.
favorite tip ever. Thanks for that." So,
Well done. Now, that's a great tip because I was always told with presentations to leave the teasers towards the end, which of course someone wraps you up early or you run out of time, you've missed out. So I like your idea of flipping it around and
to,
putting some important.
when you go through sales training and things like that, then like Demo to Win, great great sessions and great training, but it's that they talk about that you have this limbic approach, and you have highs and lows and highs and lows and highs and lows, and that and then you want to end on something exciting so that people remember that. Now, that's if you're doing a sales presentation. So if you're doing an overview of the organization, or if you're trying to sell something to them, when I find that when you're informing people, then it's a little bit different. Now, I wouldn't front load everything with the great stuff and then end sort of like on a dull note, but you want to make sure that you get to the core information, and then achieve what you want to tell them by the end. When you're writing something, then you've got the liberty that you've got all this time, that these words, that they're captive. They have to go to the end to find out what happens. So what I tend to try to do or what I do is I try to have as much of the core information as possible at the beginning, and then have an ending which is good and memorable, or but the sections in the middle are things that you can skip. So if you're looking at your time management and you move through and you say, "I'm running out of time," then you can, that you can cut out this part, you can zip through it, and then go to the end, and then finish on sort of like a high note as well. It's time management and presentation management and going through a story. And sort of depends on whether it depends on what you're presenting. If you're at a user conference, then you want to show as much useful things, but also exciting things, as opposed to getting getting through the user requirements that you may have to do for a sales presentation. So different audiences, different ways of presenting things.
I like the idea of giving a concertina effect in the middle. That way you can decide as you're going and, rush it through and get to the end.
Yeah, or skip it or whatever you want to do. But it also requires you to know the content and what content is
Yes.
coming up, which you tend to know with a PowerPoint that you're moving through, and have some sort of plan along the way. I do a lot of my planning with Post-it notes, with sticky notes, which allows me to move things around, and then if I need to, I can just pull something out and work through it. But it's a technique that I use for a lot of my presentations.
That's awesome. Great advice. If I'm aware of the time myself, it's 1 hour. If I were to ask you for the viewers, what is your recommendations for someone trying to start off on the journey, like a bit like you've gone through? They might be a functional consultant, support people in D365 and saying, how do I take it to the next level? Would you say it's blogging? And if so, how would they start?
So I would, if I was starting now, I'd approach this a lot differently. So
Mm,
I'd do what I'm doing, but use a different medium. So the first thing is that when you're learning something, you've been given a gift. You know nothing, and everything is new to you. Everything may be hard. Everything may be a little bit difficult. If you're struggling, then there are people in the same shoes that are struggling with it. So there's
yes.
nothing too small that you can't share. And so if you want to go out and start sharing information, then
Mm,
that's a great way to do it. I went out, and because of the avenues that I had when I started, then I did a lot of blogging and blog posts and so forth. Now the better way to do it
mm,
for in the long term is through videos.
mm.
So which is a skill that I still haven't cultivated a lot, but create videos of what you're doing or document them, or do both. The sort of have a blog post and then note down what you're doing, but then have a video and put it on YouTube, because the benefit of that is not only does it improve your brand, but you can create your own channel, and you can do some more things with video content, and even monetize it if you want to, as you sort of build your brand. But you have to start and do it consistently along the way. So it's however you create your archive of how to do things, whether it's writing or whether it's creating videos, then just do it. And don't let perfection be your major barrier. It's because you can worry about things and formats till the cows come home. And
Mm.
I do this. I'm trying to create a new format for my guides, and I'm just getting into paralysis on the format, and I should just move forward. So it's don't aim for perfection. Aim for information and the sharing of the information, and because people are really forgiving if you're giving out good information that's solving their problems. So that's really the advice, which is start take this chance and start sharing away, and don't hide things away. Also, the other thing is, if someone says to you that not to do something, or something doesn't work, then that's a number one flag that you should try it. It just means that they don't know how to do it. And or if someone says it's too complicated, then that's another green light to go and try it out, because it's something that people are struggling with, and I've had people told me about that for like project management, budgeting, all these things. Oh, it's too hard to set up. Oh, set up Dynamics from scratch. Oh, that's impossible. You can't do that, and you can.
Yes.
So
One person doing it.
Yeah. So don't just listen to your inner voice. Don't listen to all these people that are trying to tell you that you can't do something along the way. And it's you just have to build. You just have the hardest part is just starting, and sort of work through that.
Avoid perfection. Red flags mean green lights. I'm
Yeah.
feeling you, Murray.
So, and
Well done.
And also start great podcasts and stay on a schedule and get people to talk on your podcasts.
Great idea. I think I might try that.
Yeah, because it's a lot of work. That's why I'm not doing it, because I don't have the gumption for the video editing and the post-production.
Yeah, I think post-production right now is like a 8-to-1 ratio, 1 hour of video, 8 hours of mucking around. But at the same time, I can see a professional can get it down, to a couple of hours where you record and edit. I know you have a Stream Deck, and that's pretty cool to be able to edit as you go.
Yeah, and it's a muscle, it's a skill, and it's a skill that you have to invest time in, just like anything. And I wish I could have a podcast, but not that skilled. And also, who wants to listen to me?
I'm sure you start one up, you'd have all your readers going towards it. I'd be one of the viewers. All right.
Yeah, we'd have 2 people online.
And our parents. Thank you, Murray. I appreciate it. I'll
welcome.
get into post-production, and your advice is gold. It has been for me in the past. And I think I even wrote an article about you that your advice is worth $1,000 an hour, because you have saved me that.
So that's great.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Okay.
Catch you.
Bye.
Bye, Murray. Bye.
Mobiz is a community-run organization. We believe in liberating people from the shackles of monotony, inspiring them to dream bigger and reach higher. We empower them to focus on the things that matter, growing their skills, solving new problems, and helping others on a global scale.
We eliminate manual work that stands between people and their future, preventing them from learning new technologies, unleashing their talents, and leaving a legacy that has a lasting impact.
Freedom doesn't wait. Join us at mobiz.com.